Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if every chronic disease you're afraid of, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, was already being prevented thousands of years ago? Not by doctors, not by pharmaceutical companies, not by $80 supplement bottles with celebrity endorsements. By food, specific food, food that appears by name in one of the most read books in human history. Here's what nobody in the health industry wants to say out loud. Modern science has now run the clinical trials. Researchers have isolated the compounds. Oncologists, cardiologists, and immunologists have published their findings in peer-reviewed journals. And again, the same conclusion keeps showing up in the data. The people who wrote the Bible weren't guessing. They weren't being symbolic. They were describing, with the limited vocabulary available to them, foods that worked at the cellular level in ways we are only now beginning to fully measure. Stay until number 7, because what modern oncology researchers found inside that specific food is one of the most stunning findings in cancer biology in the last decade. And number 10 was used as actual currency by kings. Not gold, not silver, food. Because they understood something about its value that we have completely forgotten. Let's go. 1. Olive oil, the medicine that killed no one. The Bible references olive oil more than 140 times. When the Good Samaritan found a beaten man bleeding in the road in Luke 10, the first thing he did was pour olive oil directly into the wounds. This was not a gesture. This was emergency medicine. And it worked. Here's why. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called olecanthal, a polyphenol that researchers discovered works on the body with almost identical pharmacological action to ibuprofen. Same anti-inflammatory pathway, same measurable reduction in inflammation markers. The difference is that ibuprofen has existed for 60 years. Olive oil has been available for at least 6,000. The Mediterranean diet, built on olive oil as its cornerstone, has been tested in hundreds of clinical trials and consistently linked to reduced rates of heart disease, cancer, cognitive decline, and all-cause mortality. The catch: cold-pressed, freshly harvested extra virgin olive oil is a living food. The clear plastic bottle under fluorescent store lighting is a different substance entirely. Heat processing and blending with cheaper seed oils, which studies show occurs in a disturbing percentage of commercial products, destroys the polyphenols that make it medicinal. Use it like this: a tablespoon on an empty stomach in the morning, poured generously over food at meals, never used for high-heat frying. The ancient world never deep-fried in olive oil. Neither should you. 2. Raw honey, the antibiotic that never expires. Eat honey, for it is good. Proverbs 24:13. 3 different biblical writers across 3 different centuries all described honey with the same reverence. That was not coincidence. That was cumulative cultural knowledge about something that genuinely worked. Clinical trials have confirmed that raw honey kills antibiotic-resistant bacteria, including MRSA, the hospital superbug that kills thousands annually, through 4 simultaneous mechanisms. It releases hydrogen peroxide on contact with tissue. Its pH of 3.9 is lethal to most pathogens. Its low water activity prevents bacterial survival, and it contains a protein called defensin-1 that actively destroys bacterial cell walls. No bacteria has yet evolved resistance to all 4 at once. This is why Manuka honey is now used in certified medical-grade wound dressings in hospitals across the UK, US, and Australia. The ancient world arrived at the same application 3,000 years earlier. The critical word is raw. Once honey is heated above 40 degrees C, standard commercial processing, the enzymes that drive these mechanisms degrade. The bear-shaped bottle on the grocery shelf is not the same substance. Use it like this: a teaspoon at the first sign of infection, applied directly to wounds instead of antibiotic cream, and properly stored, it does not expire. Archaeologists found 3,000-year-old honey in Egyptian tombs that was still chemically active. 3. Garlic, the antibiotic they mourned. In Numbers 11:5, the Israelites wandering the wilderness break down and weep over what they left behind in Egypt. On their list of mourned foods, garlic. Grown adults cried in public about garlic, and if you understand what it does inside the human body, their grief makes complete scientific sense. Garlic contains allicin, released the moment a clove is crushed, which is one of the most studied natural antimicrobials in modern science. A 2024 peer-reviewed study confirmed allicin's antibacterial activity against MRSA, showing it physically binds to the proteins MRSA uses to resist antibiotics, disabling its defense mechanism. Multiple clinical trials show garlic lowers blood pressure comparably to some medications, reduces LDL cholesterol, inhibits dangerous blood clots, and protects liver function. Egyptian medical papyri list garlic in over 22 separate medicinal preparations. The catch: allicin is volatile. It degrades within minutes and is largely destroyed by heat. The garlic in your pasta sauce for 20 minutes has lost most of its medicinal value. Use it like this. Crush fresh garlic, wait 10 minutes for the allicin to fully form, then consume it raw in dressings, yogurt, or added to food after cooking. 1 to 2 raw cloves daily is what clinical trials have used. 4. Figs, the fruit that saved a king. King Hezekiah was dying from a severe infected wound. The prophet Isaiah didn't just pray, he prescribed a poultice of mashed figs pressed directly onto the infection in 2 Kings 20. Hezekiah recovered. For centuries, this was read as a miracle with an interesting prop. Then researchers analyzed fig compounds and found the prop was doing real pharmacological work. Figs contain ficin, a proteolytic enzyme that breaks down dead and necrotic tissue, exactly what makes infected wounds hard to heal. They also contain psoralins and benzaldehyde, compounds with confirmed antimicrobial properties. Beyond wound care, figs are extraordinary sources of magnesium, potassium, calcium, iron, and B vitamins. Their pectin fiber feeds beneficial gut bacteria, lowers cholesterol, and slows glucose absorption. Studies show dried figs increase short-chain fatty acid production in the colon, directly feeding and repairing the intestinal lining. Use it like this. Fresh figs at peak ripeness for gut health and minerals, dried figs year-round. And for inflamed or infected skin, the ancient poultice application is backed by the fruit's actual phytochemistry. A prophet prescribed it. A king was healed. Modern biochemistry has now explained the mechanism. 5. UlithinA, the birthright food. Esau sells his entire inheritance as firstborn son for a bowl of lentil stew. Genesis 25:34. It sounds like history's worst deal until you understand what lentils actually contain. A single cooked cup delivers 18 grams of protein alongside iron, folate, zinc, magnesium, potassium, and B vitamins. Despite their carbohydrate content, lentils have a remarkably low glycemic index. The combination of protein, fiber, and resistant starch provides sustained energy with minimal blood sugar disruption, the opposite of refined grains. Here is the finding that ties this entire list together. Every blue zone community on Earth, every population with the highest concentration of people over 100 years old, shares one dietary characteristic: high legume intake. Lentils in the Middle East, beans in Sardinia, chickpeas in Icaria. The specific legume varies. The pattern doesn't. Use it like this. Soaked overnight and slow cooked with cumin, coriander, and olive oil, the traditional preparation. Soaking reduces phytic acid, making the minerals significantly more bioavailable. This isn't ritual. It's functional food science the ancient world figured out thousands of years before we measured it. 6. Barley, the grain that fed 5,000. When Jesus multiplied loaves for 5,000 people in John 6, those loaves were barley bread, the grain of ordinary people, soldiers, sailors, the poor. And it turns out the ordinary people were eating one of the most gut-protective grains ever studied. Barley contains the highest concentration of beta-glucan of any grain on Earth. This specific soluble fiber is so reliably proven in clinical trials to lower LDL cholesterol and stabilize blood sugar that the FDA permits health claims on products containing it. Beta-glucan forms a gel in the intestine that physically slows glucose absorption and carries cholesterol out of the body. Controlled studies show barley produces lower post-meal blood sugar responses than oats, already considered the gold standard heart-healthy grain. Use it like this. Whole-hulled barley as a grain bowl or in soups, where its beta-glucan dissolves into the broth and benefits everything in the bowl. 5,000 people ate barley bread beside a lake. They were accidentally following one of the most cardioprotective dietary patterns ever measured. 7. Pomegranate, the cancer biology bombshell. 200 pomegranates were carved into the pillars of Solomon's temple, not as decoration, as a statement. And modern oncology is now producing findings about this fruit that are genuinely difficult to overstate. Pomegranates contain compounds called punicalagins that gut bacteria convert into a metabolite called UlithinA. Researchers at the Georg Speyer House in Frankfurt found that UlithinA transforms ordinary cancer-fighting T cells into T memory stem cells, immune cells with the ability to continuously divide and produce fresh, non-exhausted cancer fighters. The tumor-fighting cells don't attack once and burn out. They regenerate. Clinical trials in colorectal cancer patients are now underway. Why based on this finding? Separately, a phase II clinical trial showed pomegranate extract slowed prostate cancer PSA doubling time from 15 months to 54 months, a 260% increase in the time it took cancer to progress. This is not alternative medicine. This is oncology research published in peer-reviewed journals, being translated into clinical trials right now. Use it like this. Eat the whole fruit with seeds, not just the juice. The seeds contain the fiber and polyphenols that drive gut conversion to UlithinA. The rind, steeped as tea, holds the highest concentration of these compounds. Traditional healers across the Middle East have made pomegranate rind tea for centuries. The pharmacological basis is now fully documented. 8. Goat's milk, the milk of the promised land. When God described the land he was bringing his people to, he didn't say it flowed with cow's milk. He said milk. And in the ancient Middle East, that meant one thing: goats. Goat's milk appears throughout Scripture as a symbol of provision, abundance, and nourishment, because in the world the Bible described, it was the primary dairy source for nearly every household. Modern dairy science has revealed something important. Goat's milk and cow's milk are not the same food. Goat's milk has smaller fat globules and a naturally homogenized structure, meaning it doesn't require industrial processing to be digestible. Its primary protein is A2 casein, fundamentally different from the A1 casein dominant in most commercial cow's milk, which a growing body of research links to gut inflammation, bloating, and digestive discomfort in a significant portion of the population. A2 casein is digested differently, broken down more gently, and associated with significantly less inflammatory response in the intestinal lining. But here is what makes goat's milk genuinely medicinal rather than just easier to digest. It contains caprylic acid, a medium-chain fatty acid with documented antifungal and antimicrobial properties, shown in studies to disrupt the cell membranes of Candida albicans, one of the most common and difficult-to-treat fungal overgrowths in the human gut. It is naturally rich in calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium in forms highly bioavailable to human bone and muscle tissue. And fresh, traditionally produced goat's milk carries beneficial bacteria, natural probiotics that support the gut microbiome in ways that pasteurized, industrially processed dairy cannot. Studies consistently show that people who struggle with conventional cow's milk, bloating, skin reactions, digestive sluggishness, tolerate goat's milk without issue, not because they are lactose intolerant in the clinical sense, but because the A1 casein in commercial dairy was the problem all along. Use it like this: fresh goat's milk in place of cow's milk daily, fermented into yogurt or kefir for concentrated probiotic benefit, aged into simple cheese for mineral density. The promised land wasn't flowing with a product that required homogenization, pasteurization, and vitamin fortification to be safe. It was flowing with something the human gut had been consuming and thriving on for thousands of years before industrial dairy existed. 9. Dates, the original performance fuel. The date palm is referenced more than any other fruit tree in the Bible and the Quran combined. When the Israelites arrived at Elim after crossing the wilderness in Exodus 15, abundance was described by two things: 12 springs of water and 70 date palms. Not gold, dates. Dates provide glucose and fructose that enter the bloodstream rapidly, but packaged with fiber, magnesium, potassium, copper, and B vitamins that moderate the absorption and extend the energy release. Multiple controlled clinical trials found that women who consumed dates in the final 4 weeks of pregnancy had significantly faster cervical dilation and reduced need for labor induction. The mechanism appears to involve date compounds binding to oxytocin receptors, the hormone that drives labor. In Ramadan, the tradition of breaking a long daily fast with dates and water is not arbitrary. Dates restore blood glucose rapidly, replenish potassium lost through perspiration, and do so gently enough for a stomach that has been empty all day. Use it like this: 3 to 5 dates as pre-exercise fuel, as a natural sweetener replacing refined sugar in cooking, with water to break any period of intermittent fasting. They weren't celebrated because they were sweet. They were celebrated because they kept people alive and functional when nothing else would. 10. Almonds and pistachios, the currency of kings. When Jacob sent his sons to Egypt during a devastating famine to negotiate with the most powerful official in the region, he told them to bring gifts, not money, food, and on that list, pistachios and almonds. Genesis 43:11. If Jacob considered these nuts worthy gifts for an Egyptian ruler who controlled the grain supply of the known world, understand what that says about their perceived value. Modern nutritional science explains exactly why. Pistachios contain lutein and zeaxanthin, carotenoids that protect against macular degeneration, at concentrations that outrank almost every other plant food. Controlled studies show regular pistachio consumption increases bifidobacterium in the gut more dramatically than most other nuts, directly improving immune function and reducing inflammation. Almonds provide 37% of the daily vitamin E requirement per ounce, in the form that protects cell membranes from oxidative damage. They deliver magnesium, deficient in a large portion of the modern population, at concentrations that support over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. And the fat in both nuts is less fully absorbed than the calorie count suggests, because the cell wall structure traps a portion that passes through the gut intact, feeding bacteria rather than being stored. Use it like this: a small daily handful of raw or lightly roasted almonds and pistachios, uncoated, unprocessed, as they come from the tree. Jacob packed them as gifts because in their natural state, they were the highest expression of what a land could produce. The science now explains what the patriarch sensed by observation. 10 foods, thousands of years of accumulated human observation, and now decades of clinical research arriving at the same conclusions the ancient world already held. The book was right. It just didn't explain the mechanism, because the mechanism wasn't the point. The healing was the point. These foods are not rare. They are not expensive. What is difficult is unlearning 70 years of industrial food culture that told you healing came in a capsule or on a prescription pad. It doesn't. It never did. Tell me in the comments, which of these 10 surprised you most? Share this with someone who needs it. And if you want ancient wisdom backed by modern science every week, subscribe. We're just getting started.